The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council shimmered under a dome of artificial starlight, each star carefully programmed to flicker in real-time sync with the galaxy beyond. From his seat at the edge of the chamber, Lieutenant Commander Elias Rourke tried not to fidget. Among beings who lived for centuries and plotted in increments of decades, twitching was considered a sign of immaturity, something humans were already ridiculed for. He wasn't even supposed to be here. Earth had barely made it past observer status in the Council. His presence was a diplomatic favor, a placeholder to keep relations warm after the Terran colonies contributed emergency aid during the Darvex quake. It had been a gesture, symbolic, insignificant, until today. The council chamber erupted in a hum of voices as the king of Virex Prime, a towering figure draped in molten gold robes, raised a hand. The effect was immediate, silence, thick and expectant. The king's voice came through the translation nodes with a purring gravity. As is customary among those gathered, I bring a tribute for unity and goodwill, a gift for the human delegation. Elias stiffened. The protocol briefing hadn't mentioned anything about gifts, but this wasn't flowers or a rare crystal. The way the king smiled, it had weight and cruelty. "She is my daughter," the king said, as though handing over a ceremonial blade. "Born of my blood, yet a burden I no longer wish to carry." Gasps stirred the chamber. Even the more cold-blooded species blinked. A slow, gleeful laugh rippled from a few council members. Their slit eyes turned toward Elias with barely concealed amusement. From behind the king's retinue stepped a woman. No, a creature unlike anything Elias had seen up close. She was tall, elegant, and unmistakably alien. Skin like frost-kissed sapphire, eyes too pale to be human, rimmed in obsidian. Her dark hair was styled in a war braid, one side of her scalp clean-shaved, revealing delicate circuitry etched beneath the skin. She wore armor as if it were jewelry, and jewelry as if it were armor. Her gaze met Elias's, calculating, unimpressed. "This is Princess Kayla of Virex," the king continued. "Now she is yours." It wasn't phrased as a suggestion. Elias opened his mouth, closed it, then forced himself to stand. The protocol AI whispered nothing useful in his ear, just a diplomatic note to accept graciously. The entire chamber was watching. No judging. Humans, the council had long believed, were sentimental, short-lived fools. He stepped forward and nodded, his voice steadier than he felt. "On behalf of Earth and its colonies, I accept your gift." The word tasted wrong. Kalitha's lip curled in what might have been disgust or disdain. She turned her back to her father without another word and walked directly to Elias's side, her movements precise, rehearsed, like a soldier reporting to a commander she didn't respect. The king spoke once more, tone dripping with mock solemnity. "Let it be entered into record that Virex has extended a hand in unity, and Earth has accepted it." Council protocol closed the matter swiftly. Formalities resumed. Debates resumed. The mockery resumed. They sat together in silence as the session dragged on, her presence like a shard of ice beside him. Elias didn't know where to look. Everything about her screamed danger. Her posture, her stillness, the way her fingers tapped a rhythm into her thigh like she was counting time in some other language. When they finally left the chamber, Elias exhaled hard, like he'd been holding his breath the entire session. Their escort, a neutral AI platform, guided them to temporary quarters in the ambassadorial sector. "Do you know what this is?" Caliph asked as soon as the doors sealed behind them. Her voice was smooth, low, and cold. Elias turned to face her, a political gesture. "No," she said. "It's a burial." He blinked. "What?" "They gave me to you like a piece of unwanted technology because I'm inconvenient. And you," she circled him slowly, inspecting, not admiring, "are the least dangerous place they could bury me." Elias watched her carefully. "Are you dangerous?" Caliph tilted her head. "I suppose we'll find out." She moved to the window and stared out at the synthetic garden below, her arms crossed tightly. Her posture didn't change, but her voice lost some of its edge. "He didn't even say my name," she murmured. "I noticed," Elias said. He took a seat, not too close. Why would he go to this length, exiling his daughter in front of every major power? Caliph gave a short, bitter laugh. He didn't exile me. He humiliated me. He made me into a punchline. The daughter so troublesome, so unsalvageable. She's gifted to a backwater species like some broken droid. We're not. Elias started, then stopped. She wasn't wrong. At least not by council standards. Caliph finally turned to face him, her expression unreadable. You don't want me here. I don't want to be here. So let's make something clear. I am not your property. I am not your ally, and I am not interested in playing along with whatever quaint rituals your species calls diplomacy. Noted. Elias replied, evenly, but you're stuck here for now. And so am I. So unless we want to give the council even more reason to laugh, we're going to need to pretend otherwise. She didn't answer, but she didn't argue either. He watched her for a moment longer. There was more going on, layers of strategy, of pain, of buried intent. He'd dealt with alien politics before, but this wasn't politics. This was personal. The room's lighting dimmed on a preset cycle, mimicking Earth dusk. Caliph remained by the window, motionless. Elias leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of the day settle on his shoulders. He'd come expecting boredom. Instead, he'd been handed a living, breathing crisis wrapped in the form of a disgraced alien princess. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the silence between them. Somewhere beyond the station, the stars shifted, and the real story had only just begun. The quarters they were assigned were luxurious by most standards, yet felt like a cage. Everything gleamed with sterilized opulence, walls that shifted color on command, furniture sculpted from multiple species, ambient lighting set to neutral tones. But Caliph didn't sit. She paced. Elias stood in the kitchenette, pretending to study the nutrition console's interface. In truth, he was watching her reflection in the black glass of the water dispenser. She moved like a predator out of place, cautious, coiled, and perpetually scanning. Neither of them had spoken since the morning debrief with the council's liaison. The diplomatic script had been carefully crafted. Integration, cooperation, a symbol of interspecies trust. Elias had smiled through it. Caliph had stared at the official, like she was calculating where to break his jaw first. Eventually, Elias broke the silence. Do you want tea? I've got some from Earth. It's real. Caliph didn't pause her pacing. I don't drink anything that smells like boiled soil. Fair enough. He brewed a cup anyway, more for something to do than for the taste. She stopped abruptly near the wall and turned. Why are you being polite? Elias raised an eyebrow. Would you rather I wasn't? You don't owe me kindness, she said flatly. Not after the way they handed me to you. I didn't ask for that, Elias said, setting his cup down. But here we are. I figure being decent costs less than being hostile. Decent, she echoed with a humorless chuckle. They sent me away like refuse, and you want to talk civility? I want to survive the situation with some sanity intact. Calith's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't argue. Instead, she finally sank into one of the chairs, arms draped over the sides like she was a queen forced to hold court in a garbage bin. What was the final straw? Elias asked cautiously. What made him do this? Caliph tilted her head, expression unreadable. You think this is new? My father's been trying to erase me for years. This was just his first public success. He's afraid of you? No, she said with a flicker of bitterness. He's afraid of what I remember. Elias leaned forward. Then tell me, what do you remember that he wants buried so badly? She considered him for a long time. The silence stretched until it almost felt like a refusal. But then her voice came low and deliberate. My mother was not his choosing. She was a strategist from a house he annexed. I was a bargaining chip born of necessity. But I inherited her mind, not his ambition. That always unsettled him. He couldn't control you. Worse, I started asking questions about the disappearances, the quiet purges, the experiments hidden beneath Virex's moons. I kept notes. I spoke to survivors. That's not the kind of hobby royalty is supposed to have. I wasn't interested in hobbies. I was interested in truth. Her tone sharpened. He sent people to silence me. Failed. So he changed tactics. Better to frame me as unstable than offer me as a gift to the Council's favorite fool. Elias didn't rise to the bait. And yet, here you are, alive, still dangerous. Only because he thinks the galaxy won't take me seriously if I'm tethered to a human. He set the cup down. Are you? Am I what? Tethered, dangerous, or underestimated? Kalitha's eyes flicked toward him. All three, depending on the hour. A soft chime interrupted them. Elias tapped the console. A message glowed to life. A council directive. Observation mission. Outer Rim station. Human Virex presence requested. Diplomatic optics. Standard security detail provided. He sighed. We've been summoned. Kalith glanced at the screen. Of course. They want to parade us. Show the galaxy how well the human and the cast-off princess are bonding. We'll keep it simple. In observe, report out. She rose, brushing imaginary dust from her armor. You're still pretending this is diplomacy. That's adorable. Elias ignored the jab. Pack light. We leave at first cycle. The ship was modest, but fast. Designed for short-range diplomatic runs. It lacked the military comfort Elias preferred, but made up for it in stealth and versatility. Kayla said little during the departure sequence, only checking the onboard systems with surgical precision. She didn't trust pre-programmed flight paths and insisted on overseeing the route herself. Elias watched her work, noting how her fingers danced over the console like they were part of the ship. You were trained in piloting? Since before I could walk, she said without looking up. Every Virexi air is, even the disposable ones. The journey was smooth. No pirates, no council interference. The Outer Rim station came into view like a ghost, half-lit, hunched between two asteroid belts, its communications repeating a stuttered greeting in multiple languages. As they docked, Elias checked the logs. No contact in over 6 cycles. That's odd. Kalitha's voice came quiet and sure. That's bait. Elias blinked. You think it's a trap? I think they're testing us. Or testing me. They disembarked into a dead silence. The station's power was still running, but barely. Emergency lights blinked in wounded rhythm. Doors opened sluggishly, like the station itself resented their presence. Inside, bodies floated. 3 council envoys, a maintenance droid, and 1 soldier in Virex armor. All dead. No visible trauma. No signs of struggle. Just empty. Elias crouched near the human envoy, checking vitals out of habit. The man's eyes were wide, his expression twisted in fear. No physical wounds, he said. Possible neuroshock. Something psychic. Kalith moved past him, scanning with her gauntlet. Not psychic. Sonic. There's residue. Low-frequency harmonic radiation. Weaponized dissonance. Council tech. Too crude. More like a test. Or a warning. They moved through the station, deeper into the power core. Kalith led, silent and efficient, navigating like she knew the layout instinctively. Why the station? Elias asked. Because it's forgotten, she replied. Places like this, when no one's watching, they're perfect for experimenting, discarding failures. They reached the core chamber. It had been gutted, cables torn, data cores smashed. But Kalith knelt beside a ruined console and pried open a hidden compartment. Inside, a memory drive, still pulsing. Elias stared. You expected that. I designed the station's original core security, she said simply, before my father reassigned the project and deleted all trace of my involvement. Elias took the drive, slipping it into his case. What's on it? Kalith straightened. Proof. Of his crimes. His experiments. The council may laugh now, but if they see what he's buried, what he's still doing, they won't be laughing long. A sound echoed, a soft metal clatter from down the hall. They both froze. Kalith moved first, motioning for silence. She peered into the shadows, her eyes narrowing. Then she relaxed, just slightly. Automated repair bot. Damaged but functional. Elias exhaled. Let's grab what we can and get out. We've seen enough. As they retraced their steps, Kalith glanced back once, her expression unreadable. I wasn't meant to survive this mission, she said quietly. My father wanted me erased. And you? Collateral. Then we make sure we don't give him that satisfaction, Elias said. We bring this back. We expose the truth. Caliph gave him a long look. You're starting to sound like someone I could work with. Elias almost smiled. Careful, you're sounding. The debrief chamber pulsed with sterile light, a rhythmic throb that seemed deliberately designed to unsettle. Elias sat on one side of the transparent partition, hands resting calmly on the table. Kayla stood, arms folded, leaning against the wall with calculated indifference. The 3 council observers on the other side, 2 human, one of some insectoid lineage, watched them with dispassionate eyes, their styluses flicking occasionally to annotate their thoughts. You understand, one of the humans said, her voice hollow with rehearsed diplomacy, why this retrieval complicates the narrative we've been trying to maintain. Elias didn't flinch. The narrative you've been trying to maintain is built on silence. This proves that silence is a cost. Kalitha's lips curled into a ghost of a smile. You don't like surprises, counselor. That's unfortunate. The galaxy is full of them. The insectoid's mandibles clicked, a translator vocalizing a response a moment later. This information you bring, does it implicate the Virex throne directly, or are we to assume it is the work of rogue actors? Kayla stepped forward then, slow and deliberate, letting each word fall like a hammer. There is nothing rogue about the methods outlined in that drive. The orders are signed by my father. The experiments funded through royal channels. The victims selected from populations deemed strategically expendable. That is not a rogue act. That is policy. Silence followed, dense and lingering. The second human finally spoke, older than the others, his tone measured. If what you say is true, this puts the council in an impossible position. You already place yourselves in one, Elias said, the moment you allowed the Virex crown to trade away a living person to preserve political goodwill. We accepted a diplomatic gesture. No, Caliph interrupted, stepping closer to the barrier, her eyes like blades. You accepted a lie wrapped in tradition. My father used you. He counted on your vanity, your need to feel powerful. You took me because you thought it meant something. It didn't. I was just trash he needed to dispose of cleanly. The translator clicked again, more slowly this time. Then what do you seek, if not reinstatement or retribution? Caliph looked at Elias. He met her gaze and nodded slightly. Truth, she said, and consequence. Outside the council compound, they walked in silence to the capital's upper tier. The city shimmered in the early dusk, spires catching the pale gold of the twin suns. Traffic hummed in clean streams above them, oblivious to the shift in political undercurrents just beginning to take root. Elias broke the silence first. They'll bury it. Caliph didn't answer immediately. She was watching a group of children race holographic animals in the square below, their laughter echoing in the quiet. Maybe, maybe not. The council feeds on perception. If the right worlds hear what's on that drive, it won't matter what the council wants. You have a plan. I always do. They turned into a quieter street, where an old comm station stood abandoned. Caliph bypassed the front lock with a gesture, the door hissing open on creaky hydraulics. Inside it smelled of dust and decay. Elias looked around at the rows of obsolete equipment and blinking emergency lights still drawing power after decades. This is where we broadcast? He asked. No, she said, kneeling beside a rusted console and pulling up a floor panel. This is where we disguise. Beneath the panel was a small case, sealed with biometric locks. She opened it. Inside lay a compact emitter, illegal in most sectors, capable of transmitting across dozens of encrypted frequencies simultaneously. It was old tech, but potent. Where did you get that? Elias asked, already guessing the answer. From the people your council erased. The ones I used to meet in the dead zones. Scientists, smugglers, survivors. She handed it to him. You're the diplomat. You'll know how to make it sound convincing. Elias turned the device in his hands. The weight of it more than physical. If I do this, it won't just be the council we're up against. The Virex will retaliate. Hard. Kayla smiled without warmth. Then they'll finally be treating me like the threat I am. They worked in silence for a while. Caleb rewiring the emitter's frequency matrix, Elias composing a message short enough to slip past military jammers, but damning enough to ignite outrage. Every word was weighed like ammunition. Every pause loaded with implication. When it was ready, Elias looked at her. Last chance to back out. Caleb's gaze was steady. If you're asking for fear, you're looking in the wrong place. He activated the emitter. The pulse went out. It took 12 hours. Then came the riots. Not on the Central Worlds. Of course. Not in the glittering towers where politicians preened and postured, but in the fringe colonies, on the mining moons, among the transport guilds and trade syndicates that had lost people, family, workers, entire settlements, to disappearances explained away as pirate attacks or radiation leaks. The message had found them, and they were angry. Footage flooded the public channels. Kalita's voice describing her father's crimes with surgical clarity, splice of the station's corpse-strewn images, and Elias's measured summary, identifying the council's complicity in maintaining silence. The response was immediate. Protests turned violent. Council envoys were chased off minor planets. Trade routes froze. Virex holdings on 3 outer sectors were stormed by civilians and ex-military alike. And through it all, Caliph and Elias stayed hidden. In an old smuggler's ship tucked into an asteroid field, they monitored transmissions and plotted the next steps. Caliph had never looked more alive. Elias had never felt more responsible. "You do realize," he said during a quiet moment, "this is no longer a personal vendetta. This is revolution." Caliph glanced at him, the corner of her mouth twitching. "Good. It was always bigger than me." He rubbed his eyes. "We're going to need allies." "We'll have them. Soon. There's a summit in 3 days. Virex will be forced to speak publicly. He'll have to address the message." Elias nodded slowly. "And we'll be there." Caliph turned to face him fully. "You can still walk away. Say I manipulated you, that you didn't know what I was planning. Wouldn't matter. They'd never believe I was involved. And I don't want to be the kind of man who would take that out." Her expression softened. "Then we do this together." A moment passed between them. No vow, no promise, just a quiet understanding. Outside, the asteroid field shimmered with distant lightning storms. The galaxy was beginning to notice. They arrived at the summit cloaked in anonymity. Caliph wore a hood that shadowed her silver eyes, the regal line of her jaw obscured by the simple cut of civilian garb. Elias walked beside her, a diplomatic badge fastened to his collar, an ironic touch of legitimacy in a room thick with pretense. The summit of unified powers convened once every cycle, though it rarely achieved anything more than ceremonial gestures and polished lies. This time, the tension was different. Delegates whispered. Security doubled. The undercurrent of rebellion buzzed just beneath the polished floors. A massive auditorium spiraled around the central dais, each delegation nestled into its own carved-out tier. The Virex contingent sat high and to the right, their armor ornamental, but their eyes sharp. In the center stood the king. Regal in posture, untouched by scandal, the Virex monarch wore no expression. His crown gleamed, composed of polished fragments of world his empire had claimed, stolen, or broken. He moved as though the galaxy still bent to his whim. Elias leaned toward Caliph as they took their seats in the civilian gallery. "He doesn't look worried. He doesn't know what's coming," she said. "Yet." The council high voice stepped into the light and called the summit to order with a series of declarations and procedural acknowledgments. Delegates from 20 systems stood and spoke their lines. Most deferred. Some offered warnings. One dared to speak of the outer colony uprisings and was swiftly silenced by a point of order objection. Then the Virex king rose. He did not bow, not even to the council. His voice, deep and commanding, echoed through the chamber without augmentation. "There's been an unfortunate storm of misinformation," he said, "fueled by desperate minds and ill-kept records. These rumors, spread across the void like disease spores, claim atrocities my empire has not committed. We reject these slanders. We will not apologize for shadows cast by traitors." Kalita's hands curled into fists. He continued, calm and sovereign. These so-called revelations are the death cries of a failed child and her misguided pet human. They will find no audience here. Let the record show, Virex stands unshaken. The chamber murmured, some with approval, others with discomfort. Kayla stood. The gallery quieted as if the oxygen had been siphoned from the air. She stepped down the central stairwell, lowering her hood, her face unveiled to all. Gasps followed her, whispers cascading to the tears like a ripple of panic. Elias stood, but did not move to stop her. This was not his moment. Caliph walked onto the floor, flanked immediately by 2 guards, who hesitated, uncertain whether detaining a former princess would create a larger scene than her presence already had. "I was never traitor," she said, her voice clean and fierce. "I was loyal to truth when my father chose deception. I served our people when he began discarding them like failed prototypes." The guards looked at Council. The Council did nothing. She took one more step forward. The Virex king did not flinch, though his eyes had narrowed. "You call me a failed child," Kayla said. "But I see now I was never your daughter. Just another experiment to mold or erase. And like the others, too many to count, I've come to expose you." She turned to the Council. "I carry the full archive. Names, locations, orders, dated, verified, authenticated. Every one of you who sat silent while colonies were sterilized for security purposes. You will share his guilt." Gasps erupted. Elias stepped forward, producing a holographic tablet that streamed part of the recovered data above their heads. Footage of dead scientists, test logs, coded orders with the king's imperial seal. Kalitha's voice rose, a quiet fury laced with grief and resolve. "You think you've silenced us. You haven't. The dead are louder than ever now." The council scrambled. Delegates shouted over one another. The Virex guards finally moved, but not to arrest her. They backed away. The king rose from his seat, his control fractured. "You will pay for this treason," he said, low and venomous. "No," Elias said calmly, lifting the tablet higher. "You will." The high voice of the council struck her staff, once against the floor. "Order. By council law, we require investigation. All systems implicated in this archive are now under provisional review, effective immediately." The king's mouth twitched. "You would threaten an empire." "We would protect sentience," said the high voice, and her voice, for once, sounded like it meant something. Kayla stared at her father. There was no triumph in her eyes, only finality. "We're done," she said. And they were. They left the summit under heavy escort, not as prisoners but as protected witnesses. The council, now fully entangled, had no choice but to shield the mess they had once ignored. The investigation would take months, the fallout years. On board the diplomatic cruiser, Elias leaned back in his seat. Kayla stood at the viewport, watching the stars pass. "You look exhausted," he said. "I feel alive." He nodded. "What happens now?" "We wait. We keep moving. The Empire won't die in a day." "No, but it's bleeding." She turned to face him. "You could return to Earth. They'd probably call you a hero. I'm not going back." She searched his face, as if confirming something unspoken. "There's still more to do," he said. "Still too much rot buried beneath protocol and pretense." Kayla stepped closer. "Then stay. There's a war coming, not the kind with weapons. The kind with truth. We'll need more than soldiers." He offered his hand. She took it. The stars outside spun slowly, endless and bright. Neither of them smiled, but neither of them looked away.